And we are live for another Friday night hashtag TQIF. And that is your weekly YouTube lineup where we always start the weekend off with a live Tex-Trek podcast. We're going to talk about the newest episode of Star Trek, and that is Star Trek Discovery's Rubicon. And then later on tonight, there will be some late night fun over on the Starfleet Boy After Dark channel, which I believe I am going to be hosting. I think that's the plan. But I'm sure there's going to be some other people around and there's going to be plenty to talk about. But in the meantime, I have these two gentlemen here with me to discuss some Star Trek Discovery.
Right on.
So let's just go ahead and get started with the show. I'm Fathery.
This is Dave.
This is Brian.
And this is Tex-Trek.
Engage.
Welcome back aboard the Starship Texas for the 178th installment of the Tex-Trek podcast, the home of Star Trek fandom from deep in the heart of Texas, where we take a deep look at Star Trek, old and new, and proud members of the TrekSphere network. Tonight, we are talking about Star Trek Discovery Season 4, Episode 9, Rubicon, written by Alan McElroy and directed by Andi Armaganian.
And so this is about the runabout from Deep Space Nine?
Yeah, the rivers.
That's right. DS9 had all the river themed.
Yeah, the best one being the Rio Grande or Rio Grande, however you want to say it. Because that's, if you don't know, our international audience might not know, that is the border between Texas and Mexico is the Rio Grande River.
Hell yeah.
But we're going to talk about this lame Italian river called the Rubicon. So
That apparently had some vague reference in history. I don't know,
yeah,
whatever.
Yeah.
Crossing the Rubicon is a bit different, metaphorically speaking.
Crossing the Rio Grande.
Yeah.
It rather is.
It's very different. Very charged politically, but also very different.
Yeah, very different context. And context as for kings. But enough fun with episode titles. We need to do a little bit of housekeeping before we get into this episode. Just want to remind everyone that in 1 week, I will be in the state of Florida, home to our friend Starfleet Boy. So if you're one of the people who check out the show live on Fridays, then you need to be aware we might be streaming at an earlier time. I'm thinking probably around 4 p.m. Eastern, 3 o'clock Central. I'll be sure to post updates if you follow me on any of the socials. You will be in the loop on that, but that's probably a safe bet is 4 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Central, because I will be on the Star Trek cruise, and then we will still get the show out while I'm away. We have plans, so hopefully all of that remains on course, and we'll have the discussion of the Picard premiere and also Discovery Season 4, Episode 11 will be the same week, the same day, the same podcast. So big stuff on the horizon. Just want to make sure everyone kept that in mind. That might be early time next week, and then Picard in 2 weeks. We're only 2 weeks away from the return of Picard after 2 years of waiting.
Fathery, if Sohail, if Starfleet Boy hosts, is it going to be like Matt Decker taking over? And Brian's going to have to certify that he's insane to get him out of the seat eventually?
Yeah, that's the same joke that you made last week.
That exact one?
Yes.
No.
Check the tape. Check the tape.
All right.
Consistency is a virtue.
It is.
Yes.
I normally wouldn't point that out, but I feel like it would be so obvious in the to our audience. I had to get in front of it.
Fair enough.
But we're also going to be fair on this episode and cut it apart, look at it from various different angles, give a deep dive analysis to it, and just share our overall opinions on it. So before we do that, I want to recap it by reading the official synopsis, and then I'll kind of expand on that with spoilers to give a real quick summary, and then we'll each share our broad thoughts on the episode before discussing it in greater detail. We have this episode of Rubicon. The official synopsis reads, Captain Burnham and the USS Discovery race to stop Book and Ruon Tarka from launching a rogue planet that could inadvertently endanger the galaxy. So, yeah, essentially the plan that Tarka and Book had of using the isolinear weapon on the DMA, Burnham is actually able to talk Book out of doing that. They come to a compromise, like, hey, let's just wait and see if we can maybe make first contact with these aliens and find some other solution. And then Tarka is like, oh, screw that. And he pulls the trigger on it, and they destroy the DMA, only to learn that these aliens are so powerful, they just instantly create another one. So that was Rubicon.
Somewhere those, I want to see a little end sequence, post credit sequence of the aliens just chuckling, like just
Either
like
that, or there's
just like hit the backup button.
Yeah. There's just like some maintenance guy. He sees like a little light bulb is burnt
Oh,
out, so he
that
just
went off. Yeah.
presses some buttons or something. Other than that, he's just playing solitaire on the work computer all day.
That's those super. It's the super robots from Picard.
The Synthulu people.
Yeah.
Well, in our live audience, Doc McGillicuddy, saying it's V'ger. That's been a popular theory for a while. I don't think it's going to pan out, but I've been wrong before.
He threw in so many R's on there. I think Doc McGillicuddy is a pirate.
It's
V'ger. You got to say it.
Well, Brian
digitized my leg.
Brian, we'll let you give the first opening statement. Will you just share with everyone your broad thoughts on Rubicon?
Yeah, I like this one a lot. Again, this is it kind of reminds me of some of the other ones this season in that it's got a whole lot of adventure and action, but also but all of it laying on top of foundation of meditations on the human condition and character drama and stuff, and of course the ever solid bedrock of Michael and Book, which apparently can support just about anything, as we've saw last week. So I overall liked it a lot. The thing that struck me most about this one, though it's something I've been seeing fairly often since the current showrunner took over on Discovery, and is that
Michelle Paradise,
yes. I love how Discovery these days embraces the value of open communications. Even when things are awkward and uncomfortable, it still sees the value in that. And obviously this is somewhat championed by Michael, but by other characters as well. So much drama these days and throughout history since way back when is the drama is generated because one person doesn't know something that somebody else knows. And Discovery these days tries to fly above that by just having people be honest, sometimes brutally, sometimes even meanly honest with each other all the time. But a lot of times in a very affectionate, helpful way as well. And I like that because it forces you to come up with, instead of the conflict is because this person A doesn't know everything person B knows, and perhaps even B doesn't know everything A knows, instead of that driving the conflict. And you feel like if these two people could just sit down at a table and have a conversation, they'd probably work it all out. It's actual ideology and foundational motivations that are driving the conflict in the story rather than a lack of information. And so much of Discovery season 1 and 2 was about people lying to each other and keeping secrets from each other, that I really like that Michael's just kind of running around spearheading everyone just being honest with each other. Like, you know, and that it works. It perhaps in an unrealistic Star Trek way it works, but it's still, it's part of what I love about Star Trek is that sense of optimism. Like Michael literally just sends information off to Book while he's off running around trying to start a big, you know, multi-galactic war. And Book will actually reply to the messages. They actually keep a surprising amount of open dialogue between the two of them, even though they're supposed to be enemies butting heads. They still, like, it's not quite as toned down as the Looney Tunes thing where the what is it, the wolf and the sheepdog punch the clock before they go to work, but fighting each other. But there's definitely this level of open communications, and Michael is also like, and they highlight it in this episode where Michael says, "Oh yeah, Non is here to keep an eye on me and make sure I'm objective, and take over if I'm not." And she actually at a later point says, "Oh yeah, if Non says to fire the missile, fire the missile." You know, there's this sense of open honesty that it's not admitting that I agree with you, but we are not going to be playing mind games by keeping secrets from each other. That I actually really appreciate about the show, and I really appreciated about this episode, is that it showed there's a strength in that, and that you can still tell really interesting, really dramatic stories that are probably more meaningful because secrecy is not the only thing that is driving the conflict. Anyway, sorry, went on for a bit, but that was my thoughts.
Cool. Dave, what about you?
You know, I sort of agree with Brian in theory, but in practice, because I do find that the trope of secrets is an overplayed trope, and B, you know, I want to see Trek pushing me beyond what I'm used to in the 21st century. I remember I was a little resistant to some of the family chumminess of the crew in Next Generation, and because I was used to sort of I guess I'd say a more militaristic 60s style is what I grew up with. So I do like the idea of communication, but I also found that it felt like it robbed the episode of a lot of drama as executed. That I felt it was like a toothless suspense to me, and so unfortunately that second part where you found that it was telling a meaningful story wasn't so much the case for me. I felt like Non pulled back so many times on that threat to take over. I was actually thinking of the Doomsday Machine earlier, to return to that one more time, because of the incredible suspense when Matt Decker was in command and they disagreed, and it was like, oh, this guy is, well, he's gone full Ahab basically, you know, I don't need to see that recreated, but I do want some level of that intensity when you're closing in on the end of a season and you've got essentially, you know, the possible like annihilation of an alien race or the triggering of their retaliation that could, you know, really just go terribly for the galaxy. I wanted more suspense, but Non kept on pulling back when Burnham would say, no, he fired torpedoes at us, or no, he it probably wasn't him who pulled the trigger. It was somebody else. And I felt like, I was like, oh, she's not really, Non is not exactly clamping down on Burnham's excesses. And so the suspense, I was like, okay, once it became clear that Burnham and Book were kind of both going to go to bat for each other, I felt like I was kind of just twiddling my thumbs waiting for their inevitable compromise, and I was even pretty sure that Tarka was going to like pull the trigger anyway, and that is what happened. I saw somebody's review somewhere, and they said something that made sense to me, which was that this episode, I think, could have been truncated to the last 15 minutes of the previous episode. That episode could have been tightened up and to make room for this. and gone out with a bang, because I don't think they wanted a sort of a variant of a Mutara Nebula kind of showdown with both of their experiences together, matching them up. But if you say, oh no, as soon as they see this thing, if they pull the trigger, that's the end of it. So we got to stop them before they do that. But then they keep on saying like, well, let me keep him on the line. Well, let me keep him on the line again. Well, maybe he didn't mean it.
Yeah, but they had a plan. They were just needed to buy enough time for them to come up with the computer algorithm that would predict how long it takes for the DMC to move around, or DMA. To move
right
around.
Well, they set it up so that there were like, initially they were sort of making it sound like the instant that they get there, basically as soon as you spot this, which could happen at any point, as soon as they get to that center of it or whatever, that Book could fire and Tarka could fire the weapon, and that's it. No, they've crossed the Rubicon. And but like once they got there still seemed to be, I was like, oh man, they're in the cloud, that this is do or die time. If they see him, they're going to have to shoot. And not only did they not shoot, eventually they did, but they got to the point where like he shot at them, they shot at him, and and they were like getting in between him and that, and I was just like, really? Like, are we? That seems silly to me. Just toothless and silly. Anyway, I don't want to get to the point of repeating myself. We can talk about it a little bit more as we get into specifics. But this is the third episode in a row that I've really been like, oof, about. So I'm really hoping the last few episodes surprise me. Fathery?
Cool. Well, for me, I had a few issues with the episode last week. It did win me over in the end, but there were some things where I was disappointed. I really loved the episode before last week that I thought that set up this conflict between Book and Burnham, and I felt last week kind of undercut some of it. I wanted their next reunion to be a bit of a more dramatic confrontation, and I got that with this episode. I feel like this was getting back on course. I'm actually really enjoying the show now more than I've ever enjoyed it in its 4 seasons. And I think a big part of that is because it's shaken a lot of the awkwardness and kind of aimlessness that I feel Discovery's had from very early on. I like the spotlight on the Book and Burnham relationship. And for exactly some of the same reasons Brian was mentioning, that open honesty and communication between the two of them really helps me like buy into it. And I thought it was really cool to actually see this conflict between like these two people who hate that they're having to go against each other and trying to, they're trying to avoid hurting each other. The way that they structured all of the ship shenanigans, the spore jumping and blocking the other ship and shooting torpedoes, shooting sensor blinders, all of that stuff. I was really impressed with how Discovery actually slowed down when it needed to slow down to explain those things, and then was able to very gracefully speed back up when it wanted to do more of the flashy, actiony things. And I was like, wow, like the show has always had like this really awkward style of things like pacing or taking the time to explain little technical details that make certain sequences make more sense. And I'm watching this episode and I'm like, oh, they've actually figured out how to like have their cake and eat it too. And that impressed me a lot. Which probably shouldn't be that big of an impressive thing. That should just kind of be a standard expectation, but it's something the show's always struggled with. So I'm glad to see it shake that criticism. And I also I saw some other people saying like this episode is like very predictable to them. I don't know if it's because like I wake up at like 1 a.m. to watch these as soon as they hit Paramount Plus or what, or if I was just like so like bought into the story and the emotion of what Book and Burnham are going through. But I was kind of expecting them to stop Book and Tarka at the end. So when Tarka made the decision for the entire galaxy, like, no, we're going across the Rubicon now, baby, and pulls the trigger. That actually caught me off guard, and I was like, oh wow, I wasn't expecting that. I'm not at all surprised that he would do that, but I just wasn't thinking that I would see that in this episode. But yeah, this is really how I wanted Book and Burnham to cross paths again here, where they're still kind of separated. We never actually see them in the same room together, so it has that kind of, they're metaphorically and physically separated from one another.
It's the Kirk and Khan thing in a very different way.
Yeah. I felt
it is a little like that Star Trek 2 or at the Khan thing.
And one of the thoughts I had was everyone's always like, oh, let's rip off Star Trek 2. Fans loved that. This is a ripoff of Star Trek 2 that I thought actually worked, because I think it was pulling what people really like about Star Trek 2 out of it. The battle of wits and the constant one-upmanship of trying to come up with who's got the better clever plan. And the kind of personal stakes tied to that, rather than, oh, look, we've got somebody who wants revenge and he's going to blow up a bunch of stuff because of it, which I don't think that's exactly what people love about Star Trek 2, even if they don't necessarily realize that's not what they love. And I thought this did a much better job of ripping off Star Trek 2 than just about anything I've seen. So...
Well, let's go ahead and get into our episode breakdown, where we can kind of talk about the episode beat by beat. And we'll start at the beginning of the episode. We open with Book and Tarka, where we left off with them last week. They're building their weapon in their little rogue planet base. And then we also see some stuff at HQ with Vance and bringing back Non to the ship. And we see that hollow voicemail that Book sent to Burnham. One of the things I thought was like kind of silly at first, but then when I thought about it a little bit, it made sense. But just the idea of they have all this advanced technology, and to construct this weapon, they're like carefully like pouring like ingredients out of like laboratory like very future looking laboratory beakers and stuff. Like you can't just like use transporters to beam this stuff, but they're dealing with like really like unstable, dangerous stuff. Like, yeah, maybe you can't do that. It was a visual shorthand to show that.
I think it was a visual shorthand for suspense. I can't imagine there would be anything that they would do that wouldn't be better done by a computer. But it didn't particularly bother me because, I guess for me at least, I'll take any suspense I can in this episode, and that was one of the few scenes I found suspenseful.
It does. You do wonder that anything this volatile and special and exotic and dangerous, you'd think you'd have to wear some special suits or something to be handling it. But maybe there's a force field around it. Though I certainly, if I'd been involved, would have thrown up a little glowy force field effect around the thing just to show that, yes, you don't want to be breathing the same air as this thing.
I was thinking that when Tarka's like pouring something, I couldn't remember, did it look like sort of like some fine grain or like a powder?
It's futuristic quadrotriticale.
Yeah, it was book pouring the isolinium.
And I was like, did a few of the little pieces kind of bounce out like when I'm filling a cat food bowl? And I'm like, I feel like that might be a bad thing. Anyway.
Well, he's got a cat to take care of those pieces, so it'll be fine.
Well, he left the cat on Discovery.
Oh no! The one flaw in their plan is that the cat couldn't eat up the stray isolinear bits.
Yeah, and that's why Book was so protective of Discovery, was his cat was on board that ship.
Oh yeah, he actually didn't care about the people on it.
This is the cat. Oh no, my cat!
But they show us at this beginning the two of them working together, but they show that Book still has like a little bit of uneasiness, and Tarka explains how he's actually going to acquire so he thinks he's going to acquire his power source with the null space bubble to protect the power source. I'm glad they actually offer that explanation, because then if he just like blows the thing up at the end and there's no power source, it'd be like, well, it looked like if there was one, you would have blown it up, you dummy. So I like that they... That's the thing I was talking about. Like, the show, like, sometimes is, like, really awkwardly, like, forget to do these little dot the I's, cross the T things. They've gotten so much better at writing that type of stuff. I think after just years of being beat up on the internet by people like us who pick these things apart, they actually put a lot of effort into that now. Yeah. So it is appreciated. I just want that compliment thrown out there for all the shit they get when they don't do it.
Yeah, there is an art form to it, but if you've got one guy on your writing staff who knows how to do it, they can just read through anybody's script and just add a couple of lines here, there, and whatever. Steve Moffat was really good at just throwing in a line or two of dialogue to justify whatever crazy stuff he wanted to do on screen and making it within the context of Doctor Who work. It was something Russell T Davies was terrible at. And so I appreciate, maybe they just got one person in the writer room who's good at this, who just goes through and, checks, dots these I's and crosses these T's, like you say.
I see that in the comments that the high-tech option of a funnel for the is suggested. Stress-free K.
Yeah.
Beam a funnel to me.
Yes. Funnels like seatbelts don't exist in this timeline.
I honestly won't complain too much about it. It's not. I don't have too many issues with dramatic tech problems.
But I liked what Brian had mentioned, the voicemail that Book leaves Burnham, how like they are trying to reach out to each other, and they have the big payoff of that later at the end when Book explains to Tarka how he does like completely trust Burnham. Mm-hmm. And I'm not a guy who like gets real sappy with love stories very often. And I think they're good when they're done well, but it's rarely something that I really fixate on in my fictional narratives that I consume a bunch of. But that was one thing that I thought was like really cool that they highlighted here, is just like, there is something like really special when you have like, someone that like you've never lied to them, they've never lied to you, and you just like so completely trust each other. And I like that they were able to showcase that here. I think a lot of what they're doing in season 4 right now really depends on if you buy into the Book and Burnham relationship. And I find it like really fascinating and fun to watch and engaging. And that's why I said like I like the focus of that instead of that kind of awkward disco. Oh, well, let's go over here and mess around with the Red Angel, but then we got to go over here and do like this weird thing with Control, and then oh my god, all of a sudden like we're in the future or the mirror universe or whatever. It just feels much more strange, and I think it does probably benefit from there being stability in the writers' room, and they had a little bit of a delay before they were able to start shooting this season, so I think they might have had time to like iron out some scripts or something. But yeah, I definitely enjoying these moments between Book and Burnham. Makes me wonder what they're setting up towards the end of the season, which I have some theories on. I'll share at the end of the show.
Father E, you and I talked a little off mic as I've kind of slowly come to the realization that Burnham may be my least favorite character in the ensemble that is Discovery. So a few episodes that focus exclusively on her and Book, and I thought Book's addition would kind of revitalize my interest in her as a character, but it just doesn't seem to be. I don't know why. I find all this is for years I've seen people on shows like Buffy and things like that say like, Buffy is the one I hate the least. She's super boring. Willow is interesting. Xander is interesting. Giles is interesting, or whatever. And I'm like, I get that, but I like Buffy, man. What's wrong with y'all? But this is a rare case where I think I've found that I'm not fully able to plug into Burnham if she's not part of a broader ensemble. So I've been seriously missing more Saru time, Tilly's absence, and all of that stuff. And I think that may be part of why I've disengaged from the last few episodes so notably, is because, it's not so much that I don't buy into their relationship, it's just that I'm not engaged with it.
What did y'all think about the return of Non? Was that like a character people were like dying to see back? I was kind of surprised that, the Yum Yum Barzan. That's kind of like all she's known for to me. But a lot of people were like really thrilled to see her back. So
I noticed that in sort of in Trek circles. I think I'm neutral on it. I honestly was solidly on board it, although it felt like I was like, how did she kind of rise through the ranks quickly enough to be able to have oversight of a ship captain? That seemed a little weird to me, but I would have been more on board had her presence had more teeth.
Well, I mean, she kind of outright says at the front end, I didn't want the job going to somebody else, doesn't she? Which...
But like, you're talking about Non said that.
Yeah,
to,
Non
to
says
like
something to that effect.
the admiral.
Actually, to Michael when she's she's
Well,
like,
I mean,
"Oh
like-
yeah, well, I didn't want the job going to somebody else," and I was like, "So you can, in hindsight, it was just I don't want somebody screwing up Michael because I trust Michael, so I'm going to volunteer to be her babysitter because I know I won't screw up Michael."
Well, I think it was Vance's call. I think he's the one.
Right. I assumed Vance made the call on that, but I was just like, why? How did Non get? And I don't know that there's particular precedent for putting somebody who essentially who can pull the trigger on a weapon on a bridge of a ship or something like that. But I was like, she's not an admiral. She doesn't outrank Michael, I don't think. So how did she get that spot? And I guess it's kind of a special position assigned by Vance.
Yeah.
Well, and she's working in Federation security, which was kind of odd. They called it Federation security instead of Starfleet security. But this is the 32nd century. They've folded all of these organizations into one another. But she's not like a low ranking. She's a commander. She's a full commander. So she's not like pretty low. I mean, like they were able to give Cisco command of a deep space station. So I think like you're in charge of like firing on the ship is. I think that's acceptable to give to a commander from your intelligence organization. But I had forgotten that they were in seasons 2 and 3 kind of writing this character to be like like the security badass,
a little more hawkish,
and definitely more like she's kind of the Worf of the show. So I think we're meant to believe she has this like shown to be like really great on this last year, her doing like all of these nasty Emerald Chain recon missions that she was on.
I was happy to see that like just on a general level, she got to have her implants removed. They did some cool 32nd century stuff, medical stuff, and so that was cool.
I have to admit, I was like, "Oh, Non's back. I guess that's cool." I did not. That was about my reaction. I don't dislike the character. I thought they used her in an interesting way, but if it had been some new character, I don't think I would have liked or disliked the episode much more or less than I did if it had been some new person we hadn't met before, as long as they were well written.
You're saying you're sort of non-committal?
Yes, I'm non-committal. I do want to know, what is Federation security? I know the old Last Unicorn Games role-playing game had something called Federation Security Service or something, and they were like the FBI. Well, Starfleet Intelligence was kind of the CIA, so they would handle largely internal matters to the Federation and internal crimes and problems. If Starfleet Intelligence would handle external threats, but they also say that she's busy going out and dealing with Emerald Chain stuff.
Those like out on the borders. I think the words they say are outer sectors, which could still be inside the Federation. It could be like the outer sectors of like going like undercover, like a federal agent going undercover and like organized crime or something like that. But that's to me like her role did feel more like CIA than FBI, in my opinion. Yes. However, they said in season 3 that the Federation and Starfleet are basically merged into one organization. So like your government and then your military / NASA is all like one big thing now.
So again, then why isn't she just Starfleet security? why is she Federation security if it's merged? So I was a little confused.
But she has a Starfleet badge. I liked her uniform though. It looked kind of it looked mean and like in gray, but I guess like that's kind of the vibe they're going for. She's more of the soldier type.
Yeah, I guess I felt like if they're going to make a big deal about her being Federation security instead of Starfleet security, then they should explain what that means, and they didn't. And
I don't think they're under obligation to do that because they've kind of. When they said like the Federation and Starfleet, it's all like one thing under one roof now. I feel like they kind of like gave themselves a pass on this type of stuff.
I guess, but then why make a big deal about the difference?
They didn't though. They just said that she's Federation security. Like, have they ever mentioned? They've never mentioned Starfleet security in seasons 3 and 4, have they?
I don't know.
I don't think it's something that like hardly any viewers are gonna.
You think they just dropped it down there as kind of a placeholder to use or modify later on as they see fit, probably.
Yeah, I don't think it's something that that's going to cause too much of a stir. But
You know, Father, you talked about how she looked a little. She kind of had a harsher looking uniform and stuff. I felt that was undercut by the amount of hugs between her and Burnham.
yeah, it's like they want her to be like this tough soldier, but they still want her to be like, oh, it's like the friendly sister has like come by to visit the family, or something like that.
What I wanted, my model for that is Jellicoe from TNG. I need you to come on strong like him and be an asshole.
Oh, yeah, they could have done this with y'all remember Commander Wilma, I think was her, or Commander Willa. She was Vance's aide like in season 3, and she was kind of a hard ass when they first like met the Federation, and Vance was like, I don't know you people, I don't know if I can trust you, this weird ship there's no record of. But yeah, they could have used her, but I think people obviously like missed Nod. I'm not sure why. I mean, I don't have anything against the character, so I mean, I'm happy people are able to celebrate her return. And I do like the idea of this revolving door on Discovery where characters can leave and come back. They've really been doing this for a long time. They've always had like captains drop in and then leave. We started with Lorca, and then we had Pike come by for a season, then he left, and Tyler was on the ship, then he wasn't on the ship, then Tyler came back, and then he stayed in the 23rd century, but Saru left and came back. Tilly left and is going to come back. I kind of thought she'd be back by now, but
that's an interesting point. I guess I don't want him to like people coming and going so willy-nilly. It loses a little bit of that familial quality then. But I do like in its way, it feels more realistic that a person might be transferred on occasion. And it gives them, I think, probably the actors some room to occasionally pursue a project and then return without it being some definitive goodbye. And I think that's smart of them.
We get a little bit more of the bridge characters talking to each other. Reese, their tactical guy Reese, he like really wants to like talk politics at work. He's like that dude with like the fringe opinion, like trying to sniff out someone who agrees with him. He's like, how do you feel about Book doing this? I kind of sympathize with him.
Yeah.
Apparently it's not that fringe. It was like pretty, like a fair number of people voted on it when they had their thing before. He's not quite like, he's not like QAnon.
Now, last week, we were talking about this type of stuff, and I believe it was you, Dave, who mentioned like it'd be cool if we could see like civilians talk about how they feel about like the politics of the Federation, how like all this crazy DMA stuff is like affecting the kind of the everyman on the street. It's not exactly that, but I think just the few little glimpses of Reese, and later with Bryce, and here on the bridge of the Discovery with hell, I can't think of her name. Blonde lady Nilsson, Lieutenant Nilsson. But yeah, we do get like a little bit of that. They don't really flesh it out much. It's all very surface level.
But I agree. It's broadly speaking, that's kind of a good idea. It's a way to show that it's being discussed, that the people that not only the big decision makers have thought about this, and that maybe their voices aren't the only ones we should at least consider. Next generation, TOS did that. Of course, I think I'm remembering the guy who was, smarting off about Vulcans and Romulans in Balance of Terror.
Oh yeah, Styles. Because if
Styles,
your name's Styles and you're in Starfleet, you're an asshole. Even though they spell it differently. He spells it differently than Star Trek 3 Styles.
Is that when Kirk is like, "There's no room for bigotry"?
Yeah.
On this bridge or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But on Michael Burnham's bridge, what she has room for is transparency. And it's more that honesty Brian was talking about, when Non is going to try to play it cool, and she's like, oh, I'm just here to observe, instead of being like, oh, I'm here to override Burnham's command if I deem it necessary. And then Burnham is the one who's transparent and tells everyone like no, like they deserve to know. That's why you're here. So I liked that.
And this is all setting up when Book turns and says, I trust Michael completely. It's because Michael is completely and utterly honest all the time to everybody. At least in this episode, that's the spin we're taking on it. And so I like that. I like that we're setting it up that builds that even though Book's not in the room, that's setting up that moment with Book.
And when they go off on their mission to the rogue planet, we see the Discovery cloak. So I was like, oh yeah, they actually remember that the ship has a cloaking device, because they don't really use it all that much. And we got to see it spore drive while cloaked, and that was a cool little visual sequence, I thought, where we see like the spore drive effect, but we don't see the ship.
Yeah, but they like kind of show you it by like little energy particles and stuff around it.
Yeah.
There's like it suggests it. That was a cool effect.
I did think, okay, so to go to activate the cloak, a Starfleet ship needs to go to blue alert, but to activate the spore drive, you have to go to black alert. So I guess we're in black and blue alert.
We're in dark blue alert.
Dark blue alert.
Well, let's talk about the shuttle mission to board Book's ship when they track them to the rogue planet, and how that goes horribly wrong. But that is where we get more like the Reese and Bryce trying to talk politics. And I think the reason why Reese is so like sympathetic to Book might be, y'all remember in that episode the examples when they're evacuating the planet with the prison, and Reese said like, oh yeah, when I was a kid, like a hurricane wiped out my town I lived in. So I don't know if he's like, I can only imagine what that'd be like if it was a whole planet. I sympathize with Book.
Yeah, he's thinking right now. He's like, if only I could find that hurricane and blow it up.
Yeah. If only a mad scientist was trying to blow up hurricanes.
If you've ever seen Twister, Helen Hunt's character kind of insanely seems to somehow want to get revenge or die fighting a tornado since her father was killed by one.
Is it the episode for the uniform? I get some of the episode titles mixed up, but it's one of the Deep Space Nine Maquis centric episodes. I know there is one called For the Uniform, but the one I'm thinking of is in season 4, where it's revealed, spoilers for season 4 DS9, but it's revealed that Eddington has been working with the Maquis. But there's the sequence there where they're talking about the Maquis, and we kind of see a scene similar to this where they're discussing politics on the bridge of a ship, and Bashir saying, he thinks the Maquis are all terrible, and then O'Brien, being the Irish guy of all people, he's saying like, oh well, I kind of sympathize with like some of their freedom fighter motivations, and then Eddington, trying to play it cool and not show that he's like undercover Maquis, but he's like, I don't have any opinions, I just follow orders and do whatever Starfleet says. If they say go track these Maquis, I'll go track the Maquis, and it's as simple as that. But it kind of reminded me of that when I watched this scene.
I did slightly wonder about the wisdom of sending in a commando team to apprehend Book, where one of the people on the team is all like, I think Book's doing the right thing. But it's like, that's got to be worse than putting Michael on the team, right? Michael at least thinks Book is doing the wrong thing, even if she's really sympathetic toward him. She at least thinks he's doing the wrong thing.
Maybe they should have had Non bring an assistant so she could go to go on shuttle missions to cover those.
Yeah. I also
yum.
Yeah. I also thought it was odd that there was that line, oh, he's going to get life in prison, right? I was like, so that's still a thing in the Federation. You can just be locked away for life for trying to save the galaxy in a misguided and perhaps not entirely ethical, but still fairly understandable way.
Here's a quick question. I know that Book was kind of like a free agent on the Discovery. I can't remember, or on Discovery. Did he go through Starfleet training?
Maybe like between seasons. I think,
but like we don't know for sure.
The term that they used was consultant.
Yeah,
but yeah,
well, I was just thinking that like he may not really know Starfleet law so well, and he, that might have just been like, oh, that's what I think is going to happen. I don't even know. He might be wrong.
But why aren't they wearing their little tactical armor vests that they use whenever they beam down to any planet?
That probably would have been a good idea, since they would have to expect likely resistance of some sort.
Maybe they were going to deploy that with their little programmable matter, where it just like appears on you whenever they go on board.
I mean, they had the docking tube extended, and they still hadn't switched on their body armor. The body armor they wear every single time they leave the ship to explore anything.
Or they wanted to appear friendly. I did like that they explained, well, we're going to bring Dr. Colbert to try to like talk them down, but if they don't agree...
There's so many
We'll
things
use
they did
force.
though that I felt like the notion that in this volatile a time that you could like kind of beam on board somebody's ship, sneak up, jump out on the bridge, and be like, "Hey," and then say like, "Now, easy, we're not going to fight." Like it seemed like a little bit like that seemed insane to me to jump to a role playing game comparison. I feel like if players did that, it would seem kind of crazy. Like we're gonna beam onto the enemy ship, walk up to their bridge, and tell them we want to negotiate.
I mean, it depends. The Doctor Who role-playing game has mechanics that actually encourage that behavior.
I feel like Doctor Who is a little bit more that its particular level of quirk would allow it. Trek.
I don't know.
But also, I think they didn't wear any heavier uniforms because they knew that their mission was going to get undercut, like many things in this episode, and that robbed of suspense by being ejected. They had read the script.
Yeah, they read the script and knew they wouldn't need their tactical uniforms.
Yeah.
I also thought, the shuttle's going to decompress. Don't they have like spacesuits that if they could just push a button and zoom, they've got a spacesuit on?
They had Stamets floating around in that little bubble at the end
Yeah.
of season 3. But I mean, the animated series had force field belts that no one ever seems to want to use anymore.
Yeah.
But
I think the truth is that they just didn't want. It was ultimately a sort of minor scene for the episode. And they didn't want to like dive too deep onto the logistics.
But there is one thing I really liked about it, and I agree. I would have gone on there and just stunned them because that's the one thing
exactly.
in Star Trek. I'm
at
always
that stage.
You have a little machine, a little handheld device that can just make people go take a nap whenever that's convenient for you. So I would use that pretty willy nilly. But the thing I liked about this is it showed Book having concern for his I guess he still thinks of them as shipmates and friends and stuff, but where he's scrambling to try to help the shuttle disconnect from that programmable matter alarm system that Tarka set up without permission. And they take a couple of opportunities throughout the episode to keep the audience from being like too mad at Book, to be like no, like he's still on our side. He's still gonna try to help and not be too hostile.
Yeah, I did think Tarka may be a genius, but he is terrible at practical applications of his technology. Like, who builds a lethal security system that doesn't have an off switch? I mean, I can see putting it, behind a code that only Tarka can switch it off, not Book, and okay, but there's nothing I can do to switch off this security system. It's completely lethal, and it's going to kill them all. And I'm just gonna.
Well,
I suppose about it. I'm like, really? What?
In Tarka's defense, which is a strange thing to say, that it may have been like he's got bigger fish to fry, and he was like when he was designing that system, he's like. I just want it to do its job, and he's assumed that basically he didn't spend time fine tuning it. He's like, it needs to defend me. And I'm going to work on to the next problem. Yeah. By the way, well, go ahead, finish. What were you saying, Brad?
I agree with you. I think it's plausible given who Tarka is,
but it is terrible.
The circumstances are, but it also shows you what kind of person Tarka is. That if he's running short on time, an off switch to the lethal weapon is one of the things he will not. One of the features he won't bother including in his programming code.
Just as an aside, over in the comments, I see Michael Stepniak said that he's on Team Book at this point. Mining equipment equal bad, and we can talk. Well, I guess that was really more of a last season thing when we found out it was like a dredge or something like that.
Yeah. Last episode, not last season.
Or last episode, yeah. I guess this kind of comes down to they still have secrets to reveal about whatever their motivations are. But I do kind of get it, and I think it's like, is this one of those things like Galactus in Marvel Comics, where these aliens are so above us that they don't think of what they're doing as like being that harmful, or to them it isn't. But I also think that the show may have something different from that up its sleeve, because that's kind of an old sci-fi cliche too.
And I just want to point out that I don't know if they'll be able to succeed at pulling this off or not, or what will happen, but I just want to point out, I see so much speculation on the internet. Like, I think it's V'ger, I think it's the Borg, I think it's Q. But Michelle Paradise just said this week I think it was in the Spaces event that they did with some of the actors and with her talking about the season. She said that they wanted to be sure to make the 10C unlike anything we've seen before. So if she's to be believed, if she's not just trying to mislead us, if we're gonna trust what Michelle Paradise said, I don't think it's gonna be a species we've seen before. I think it's gonna be
I like
a new creature.
Michael Stepniak's suggestion.
Yes, in our live audience, Michael Stepniak says it's clearly Murph.
By the way, it occurs to me that there's room for what she said to be true, but also a lie, in the sense that, it could be the whale probe or V'ger or whatever we want, the Nexus, evolved into something completely different from its original intent, evolved so far beyond that it is not even close to what it once was. I think she probably was being on the level, and literally meant it's not going to be some callback, but there's wiggle room, I think, in that wording, if it was in that ballpark, for it to still be something like that.
Yeah, it could still be something like the Borg, but they've just like adapted into this new version of themselves that's unlike anything we've seen before. For example,
the idea that they're calling back to technobabble from that Voyager episode, the Omega Directive, that was the title of the episode.
Yes, Omega Directive,
where
we learned about boronite, which is what the 10C seemed to be mining with the DMA.
Yes. And then the DMA itself looks a little like a bunch of omega molecules put together into a little stable form. Makes me wonder if it might be a whole new alien species, but I'm starting to get skeptical that we're going to make it out of this season without hearing the word omega in the context that it originally showed up with in that Voyager episode. That the words omega molecule is going to show up before we get out of the season, even if it's a whole new species that's building it, which I suspect it probably will be. But
well, let's go inside the DMA and talk about the hunt for the DMA controller. They have to find the device at the center of it. The cat and mouse games between Book's ship and the Discovery. And then Burnham talking Book into standing down, and Tarka taking us across the river.
Oh, one quick point on the Star Trek II parallels. When somebody's in danger, we bring them to the bridge and not sickbay, just like in Star Trek II. So they beam everyone off.
You're talking about Scotty's doomed nephew?
Nephew, yeah. And we beam everyone off the shuttle and bring them to the bridge, not to sickbay. Even though something might have happened to them, the programmable matter might be eating their legs.
Quick, beam them someplace dramatic.
Yes.
Well, they don't use the transporter room in Discovery anymore because everyone has the portable transporter. So,
but Brian's point is probably right that sickbay would almost always be a good default.
Yeah, it would be.
in
They actually like redid the transporter room set to be their bar, so they couldn't go to the transporter room on the show if they wanted.
That's
to.
interesting. They literally have undone it. I don't think I'd ever considered that. That's interesting. Yeah. You could make a case for them doing it on the bridge because every bit of intelligence is vital at this point, and maybe they saw something, knew something, and could quick convey it. But yeah, it's drama.
Well,
if the programmable matter was eating my leg, I would prefer to go to sickbay.
I will give my report, and then my leg will fall off.
Speaking of vital intelligence, we see the failure of their first mission to Book's ship. So then Non says, in the event that plan didn't work, I was instructed to show you we actually have this weakness. It's like the Death Star plans. It's like if we shoot right here, it'll just completely blow up that ship. So they have this kind of a heated conversation between Non and Burnham, but that's when Saru is like, we should find our common ground and focus on that. And then I guess that's supposed to be the message of the episode is when you're in confrontation with people to focus on what common ground you have.
And to keep lines of communication open.
Yeah. That kind of inspires her to reach out to Book.
Yeah.
I felt like that as a broad philosophy for life yes, that's a good idea, and for negotiations, yes. But I felt like this was the Cuban Missile Crisis moment, and what I wanted to see was who's the Russian commander who kept them from launching the nukes, and like y'all know about this. There was like a guy. There was like an order to launch a nuke on a Russian submarine, and like one dude who we didn't find about for like this out for decades was kind of pushed back and basically kept cooler heads. Like it's like an insane story, but yeah, like that one guy might have stopped nuclear war. I that's the tension I wanted, something like that, and I think that it's more of a time for interesting confrontations than it is for contemplative middle ground.
I did like the idea that we have a weapon that will take down our opponent. The protagonist have a tool that will take out the antagonist, because so often, oh no, the antagonist is completely unstoppable. No, we have a much more interesting story where we can just blow them out of the water, but there's all these reasons why we would prefer not to do that. And
Yeah.
find
What is the reason that they prefer not to do it, other than they don't want
to kill Book and possibly blow up the Discovery too, because they're like, okay, if we shoot him, it's going to blow up Book, but it might blow up Discovery if we can't spore jump away, because the isolinium is that dangerous.
Not to be too military here, but those are both pretty acceptable losses for saving the whole galaxy.
And then the other thing that Burnham throws in there is that, oh yeah, and we'll also lose the spore drive technology, because that ship has the prototype. And
that's notable enough.
And we have the original, and the Federation needs that.
I guess Tarka deleted the plans when he stole the prototype, we have to assume.
Like he took the IKEA. He took the IKEA instructions.
That would actually make sense. It'd be like, well, yeah, they're not going to blow me up if they can avoid it. Maybe they should have made like a bigger deal about that, because it is just one line.
I think that would have helped me.
In that argument.
Yeah. That would have helped me anyway.
But I heard it when they said that. But yeah, that's what inspires Burnham to have Stamets look up how long it's going to take for the DMA to finish mining the boronite, calculate how long that'll be, and then maybe we can run a plan by the president and by the admiral, and then get Book to stand down. And so, yeah, I like that. Okay, they're going to have to do their thinking, solve the problem by thinking, not by shooting at things.
And it's an example of them actually kind of using real science as opposed to the tech babble science.
Yeah,
that we
they're not just like reversing the polarity or realigning the deflector dish or something like that.
Yeah, you can actually understand. Oh, when all of the boromite is gone, the mining machine moves somewhere else. Okay, so if we know how long it takes to get rid of it, it is actually understandable and comprehensible. So I appreciate that.
They also did a good job with like the tactics of the confrontation, and then the techno-babbly things of like, oh, because of the dark matter interference, our scanners aren't going to be reliable, but also our cloaks aren't going to be great, so both ships are going to be not as invisible as we'd like, but also like a little bit blinded. And
the odds will be even.
Speaking of blinded, they have those sensor blinders, and then we see more of, I commented on it last week, but whenever Book and Burnham, they'll do something, be like, oh yeah, this is just like that one time during that 1 year we spent together off screen. But they do that here with and I like that it showed Burnham, like she kind of smiled when she saw what Book was doing with the magnesium flare to try to blind the Discovery sensors, and then when she countered it, Book was kind of smiling, like they still have like that admiration for each other. Which it sounds like Dave hated, because he's like no, the stakes are too high and y'all should not like each other. But
you can assume that about almost all the things in this. Like, I don't even need to talk about it, but yes, you're right.
I was watching it, I was like, oh my god, they're actually getting turned on, outwitting each other. I kind of like it. I like it. They're actually getting turned on.
Let me tell you, I would be about that in a lower stakes thing, but like they chose to do this story that puts the whole galaxy on the line, I can't feel the cutesiness of it in that context.
I think I've watched too much Doctor Who. I'm fine with people being a bit cutesy while the whole galaxy's on the line. But and I'm fine. I'm kind of over all of the dark, dire new Battlestar Galactica screaming at each other and waving guns around on the bridge stuff, kind of melodrama about no, we have to do the hard choice. I was like, does everything have to be not fun? So,
I mean, I think that's fair. I don't know that I necessarily want that. I don't want it to be like a binary thing. Like it either had to have a little bit of lightness in it and these moments of admiration and love, or it had to be Galactica. I feel like they could have had a confrontation that was some sort of different confrontation altogether that didn't involve this Mutar Nebula stuff. But yeah, I take your point.
Yeah. I will say on the science side, using magnesium to set off a hydrogen cloud, the hydrogen is going to need oxygen in order to combust, and apparently it's not a hydrogen oxygen cloud, it's just a hydrogen cloud. So, but whatever, they were trying. They at least picked something that people know can be explosive under certain circumstances, and so I'll give them a 7 out of 10 on that one. It was reasonably good. They've I've heard worse technical.
I'll let Dr. Erin McDonald know when I see her next week. Yeah, she's their science consultant.
Right. Maybe maybe they have an explanation that I don't know. Maybe they know something about hydrogen clouds. I don't know.
I'll ask her.
Yeah, please. Actually,
she'll probably be like, "Leave me alone," but I will ask.
She'll say, "Are you a nerd?" That's what
she's gonna be like, "I'm trying to eat lunch."
I did love the dueling spore drives.
Yeah,
that was amazing fun.
The ships looked good. Like one problem I've had with Discovery from early on with a lot of their ship photography, it's kind of weird to call it photography because it's all CGI, but I always think like I don't get like the sense of scale that I want. I'm thinking more so of season 1. They've gotten better in later seasons, but especially here, like the ships didn't feel small like they sometimes do. I think a lot of it was just in the direction when they would have some of those pan-in shots that go into like the windows, the bridge windows everyone hates, which I'm not crazy about. But and then like when we see Burnham and the shuttle come out of the Discovery and then fly over to Book ship, you get like a good sense of scale, and just it just looked cool. The visuals of the inside of the DMA. But the other thing I liked here was when Burnham is trying to describe her plan of like, wait, let's calculate this. This is something that Book actually might agree to, and she's saying like he's logical, and I like that, like, oh yeah, the girl who was raised on Vulcan, she's got like a respect for the logical. The conversation between the two of them where they're separated by the windows, the view screens. Speaking of Wrath of Khan, I guess you could say it kind of echoes Spock and Kirk at the end of that movie where they're face to face, but there's a barrier between them. But here there's thematically a barrier between them, and we see them trying to connect with each other through that. And that was the moment that it kind of made my heart swell a little bit when Book is like no, like I trust this woman.
Yeah, I did think the writers totally seriously considered Michael in an EV suit. I mean, they would have they load her in the EV suit and shoot her out like they do in every other season and like they did in the Kelvin movies, because that's cool. But then somebody said, let's just put her in a shuttle. We don't have enough money for that.
I think I prefer the shuttle though. It's like, it's a little bit more grounded, like literally like her feet are on the ground inside of the shuttlecraft. She's not just like floating around all like, I think it would have been a little harder to take seriously.
No, I agree. The shuttle was the right choice, but the writers actually were considering what ended up being a joke in the final version of the script.
And the second time I watched this, I was like, this better not be the same shuttle that just got destroyed. I know, like, this is shuttlecraft number 4. The one that got destroyed was shuttlecraft number 2. It's like, okay, I'm not going to take off points for that. Y'all got that right. Good job.
I was a little surprised when they said put it in torpedo tube 6. I was like, how many torpedo tubes does Book's little ship have? Picard's Enterprise had 3 torpedo tubes, according to the technical manual.
Yeah, it's 32nd century. It might be like micro torpedoes. They might be like torpedoes that shrink and then like get big when they're shot out or something.
The Emerald Chain were big jerks.
Yeah, I guess
sometimes you had to torpedo them. Over in comment land, I see the Michael Stepniak again. He was talking about thematically this being a kind of discussion of de-escalation as a concept, and that he felt it was likely police related. And I think that's interesting. I will say I didn't particularly think of it as in that context. De-escalation for sure. And thematically, I like that. I can only say that, like, clearly execution is what's tripping me up here, because I like that idea.
And
Yeah, I didn't connect those dots either, but I also have to applaud that, because I did appreciate the de-escalation. I just didn't think of that real world parallel.
Federation Security sounds like a much more police name, so that starts making more sense if that's what this episode is about. Yeah. Which, now that you've said that, I think you've nailed it.
I mean, I hate that, because I don't want police to be a thing that exists in the Federation.
Well, I'm not sure if it's exactly that, but I think it's kind of supposed to nudge us in the right direction. And
right, I think you're right, Brian.
I failed.
Although that
to
said,
it,
I still think that, like, essentially the scope of the threat here, which is galaxy destroyed or not kind of stuff, removes it a little bit from that equation. That's so far beyond our world, or our a police isolated sort of sequence that I think that removes it from it a little bit. It's just that's almost like that's a level of scope that we almost can't even conceive of.
You're more in the, it should be like 24, where you beat the hell out of them because you got to find the nuke.
No, just that this isn't doesn't necessarily correlate with a day-to-day police thing on any level, because it is that will humanity and all other sentient races survive or not? And I'm like, at a certain point with that, morality starts getting really weird. That's why I honestly, I hate to say it, it sounds so hawkish, but I think Starfleet would have been within their right to blow up Bookship, blow up the Discovery. All of that would be easy collateral damage, but for the spore drive, if you knew it could save the galaxy.
But you don't know it's going to save the galaxy either. That's part of the conundrum here, because it's like, well, you don't really know who is actually going to be the one to trigger galactic Armageddon. Is it going to be, if we allow the DMA to continue, is that going to be our downfall? Or if we blow up the DMA and piss off these aliens, is that going to be our downfall?
Yeah.
They should drop that in the next Mass Effect game.
Yeah, it's also worth noting
you get that the player is given that option.
Yeah.
Yes.
That the level of destruction created by the DMA is certainly vast from the point of view of us living on the Earth in the 21st century, but relative to the size of a whole galaxy, it's probably not all that. I mean, it would take a long time to start having a significant effect to the entire galaxy.
Yeah, Species 10C is over there like, come on. It's like 0.0000001% of the galaxy. Stop whining.
Yeah. We only killed a few billion people. It's fine. You know how many there's a thousand trillion people there, and we killed a few billion.
We should probably be getting into the quintillions, and we're talking about galactic-wide populations.
Yeah.
Somebody was talking about Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy in the comments, and that is a sort of ridiculous Hitchhiker's Guide way to lens it.
Yeah.
they're just like, come on.
Well, I guess let's go ahead and talk about the big Tarka moment where he kind of does that thing where he looks at the audience through the camera and really spells it out for the viewer at home. But he's like, in game theory, there's a certain concept. But yeah, basically, we get
in villain theory, there's a certain concept of a speech right before you do something.
Well, yeah, but what he's talking about is an actual concept in economics, I guess. But it's basically just risk evaluation, and the irony here is he says, I when Book's like, what are you doing? He says, I'm thinking clearly. When he pulls the trigger, has this big moment, sets off the DMA controller, and it is kind of like that aw shit thing when everyone goes from all smiling and happy, yay, we did it, to Book being on the comms you got to get out of here. Tarka just beamed over the isolinium weapon. This whole area is about to explode.
And suddenly it's back to being the TV show Dave wanted it to be.
It's not. I don't think Tarka is thinking clearly, and he's. I don't even know if I'm gonna like this, but I think we're definitely. likely to see him kind of become the villain of the show. If they're going to do like the big bad route and give the season like an Osira, which I don't know if I
Yep.
will enjoy. But yeah,
Well, they've
like
made him. Well, sorry. Well, I was just going to say they've made him semi-sympathetic at times, but yeah, he's clearly the driving force for a very aggressive approach.
and he was getting stuff wrong, you know, like he thought that he would find his power source, get to go home to the universe he wants to escape to. He's not going to get that. He's denied that. So now he's faced with a scenario he never planned for. You know, like the entire Federation and Starfleet, you know, they're going to come after him. You know, he's never considered these consequences, I don't think. So he kind of has nothing left to lose, and that, you know, makes for a dangerous character.
Yeah. No, I like the people in the comments keep comparing him to Elon Musk, but
Well, the thing is, like, in real life, these geniuses like don't really exist, or if they do, like, they tend to be very specialized. They know a whole lot about one little thing. But I mean, like, Elon Musk has kind of been proven to be a bit of a moron, really. Like, he was born into an extremely wealthy family and then paid to get the title of founder of Tesla cars, and then for whatever reason, like, Wall Street really likes his stock, and because they value it so highly, he's considered the richest man in the world. But yeah, he's a bit of a dum dum in real life. He hangs out here in Austin. I actually heard someone running into him recently, but. But yeah, I think that's we see a lot of these villain geniuses in our fiction, and I'm all, you know, like Lex Luthor and stuff, and I'm always like, man, like, in real life, these you know, billionaire scientists, like, none of them are actually like this brilliant. But I mean, you need your bad guys in your story to be kind of good at something.
Well,
Right,
they need to
and
be
we
able
do-
to stand up to the good guys who are
Right.
always whipping science technobabble solutions out of a hat
Yeah.
to solve
even
every problem.
In fiction, even villains get romanticized, is I think what it comes down to, and we want them to be appealing on a level beyond a little bit of the just duplicitousness of that we so often see in our own real people.
Yeah, it's kind of frightening how in real life a lot of the bad guys tend to be like, oh, they're just like big buffoons that were at the right place at the right time, and
Right, or have are canny media manipulators or tellers of their own, constructors of their own narrative.
But what were y'all's reaction to this the big moment of crossing the Rubicon, kind of the name of the episode? Because, you know, for me it was pretty impactful, but most people I've seen reactions from, I think a lot of people thought this was a little too predictable.
I thought, I guess I don't know if I was exactly surprised, but I didn't feel disappointed or annoyed at a predictability level. I thought, okay, and then Tarka does what Tarka's going to do, and that's raised the stakes. And now what's going to happen next? That was my reaction. What's going to happen next?
Yeah.
The thing
Mine was like, oh no, we spent this whole episode trying to prevent this, and I thought we did, and then now it happens, and I'm sad.
I guess. For me, we spent the whole episode getting us to Book saying I trust Michael completely, and that was the end goal for much of
that was the dramatic and emotional fulcrum.
Yeah,
for you.
And this is just setting up what's going to happen next week.
Yeah, well, in the next 4 weeks, which kind of seems like a lot. But
obviously, what will happen next is we will learn about the boring control style villain and prepare to go out with a whimper, or that's what I'm bracing for. I was
more cynical than Tarka.
I was neutral on it because I was kind of detached at that point anyway. So I didn't have any special feelings toward it other than it was setting up the what's to come. But it certainly didn't have a dramatic impact on me at that point. And I thought it, but I like, again, I was sort of feeling a bit of disappointment because I felt like their, attempt to board was toothless. The various confrontations kind of felt toothless. Non as a threat felt toothless. And then, he launches the thing, Tarka does, it's toothless, or proves to be. So it's... I'm somewhat curious to see what they will break out for the thing. it's a big danger to me in this sort of serial format TV to have big revelations held till the 11th hour, because if you don't come through on them, it's kind of unfortunate. I remember in a random example of like one that I thought worked pretty well, but it was just a 2-hour movie, was in the movie Serenity. They revealed what in Firefly, where the Reavers had come from, and what it came out of, and it had a thematic resonance with the captain's story, and I was like, oh, that's a pretty good reveal, and it set up a cool final act. But I think it works much better in sort of movie formats or episodic formats.
Well, let's talk about this ending. We have a little wrap up at Starfleet HQ, and then we should also talk about the Saru and Tarina B story, and then our ominous ending. But I guess Non leaves, but she says, "Oh yeah, I'll come back and visit the Discovery again someday." And we learn like why she like wasn't getting along with her family, which I didn't think was, speaking of not having satisfying reveals, I didn't think was all that interesting. But I had forgotten in season 3
what was the deal with her family? What did she reveal it?
Well, she just said like I had a hard time like connecting with them. Like I couldn't tell them that I was from like this ship from the past, and I had forgotten in season 3 that they classified that. I think Vance said that like we think it'll piss too many people off because of like the temporal accords. We don't want to create like the stigma about how like you're not supposed to be doing time travel in
right.
the 32nd century. So they kept that hush hush. I guess the truth still hasn't come out on that, but
yeah, I guess I thought that it wouldn't matter by the 32nd century. But
well, that's when they had those time travel laws, was in the 32nd century.
Okay, so Non wasn't able to kind of be open about that or talk to anybody.
Yeah.
I can see how that would certainly send you back to your found family on the Discovery, the only people who can talk about it.
Which he basically says like, I'll come back in season 5.
Yeah.
how I read that. And we had that B story of Tarina and Saru, where Dave, I think I've heard you express some fondness for this flirtation between them before. Does this relationship work better for you than the Book and Burnham one?
It's to me it's a little bit of a callback to sort of TNG's kind of naivete about sort of romantic overtures, which I wasn't really big on in TNG. Poor Geordi and Barkley and all of those guys, nerds. They, I feel like that's a trope that Trek could stand to retire too. Not that everybody like is comfortable with romance. That's always, I think, gonna have its role. But I think that Saru's particular timidness, it's not particularly interesting to me in this. I actually felt like since he dropped his ganglia, that I kind of wanted to go ahead and like, I would be more interested to see what comes of their relationship than see him tiptoeing up to it.
Oh.
So
well, they gave a reason for his reservations, I thought.
Was it that he was busy?
Yeah, basically like like the whole galaxy is on the line right now. I don't know if you have time for that.
Yeah.
That's true.
This did make me think though, like their hologram technology, where you can like hologram from one place to another. It's like, man, that really does totally change the dynamics of like long distance dating. Like if you could just like physically appear, the advantages that would come along with that is if you could appear as a Star Trek hologram.
Not just physically, it also works psionically. She's able to read him. Their holocom system has psionic circuits that transfer telepathic signals. I was like, what?
Yeah, we saw that with Guardian Z when he came over as a hologram to do the Trill stuff earlier in the season.
Yeah, I was just like, well, damn. Okay, then. So I at first I was like, oh, cool. They have hard light holograms. They can generate something physical in their quarters or wherever they need it in this ship. That's kind of
Tarina
cool.
seems to want to generate something physical with Saru.
Yeah,
but,
I did like
Saru's conversation with Culber when Culber says connections always there's always risk, but that kind of ties into I guess the stuff like with Tarka and with Burnham saying like just give me time. I think I can talk Book down. And it's like, oh, you have to balance risk with your assessment and with like taking your shot. And
Yeah.
Tarka ultimately decided to be like Alexander Hamilton and not throw away his shot, and he took it.
Yeah. I mean, you've got Saru sitting here saying, I could get in a relationship with this person, but Michael got in a relationship with Book, and that has not gone well at all. So,
but Culber's like, don't throw away your shot.
Yeah, yeah. I did think it was fun that Saru has the president of Navarre on speed dial, and that she probably has a dedicated ringtone for him. And I also thought it was amusing. I know you're busy running your space planet, but could you help me with my meditation technique? And she's down for it. She's like, oh, sure. I did think it was a little odd when they try meditating. Then she's like, you need to calm down so that you can meditate. And I'm like, the point of meditation is to calm you down. She's actually saying you need to go calm down so that you can then calm down. Okay. So, which is something I see a lot with people who don't quite wrap their heads around what meditation is. But I'm
not really sure I understand what meditation is. But.
So
it could just. Go ahead, Brian.
I ended up headcanoning it that she just wanted to turn this into an opportunity for to ask him out on a date.
Yeah, well, that's what I read it as well.
Yeah.
Right, and I think that she recognized that was kind of what he wanted consciously or subconsciously, and that the reason he couldn't meditate was because it's hard to think straight when you're trying to reveal to someone you have romantic feelings for them.
Especially when you're holding their hands.
Yeah, it's fixing to get Blade Runner 2049 in that room.
Nice. Well, Saru is called away from his conversation with Culber to report to the bridge because Burnham says, look, the USS Mitchell is monitoring the area of space where the DMA was, and shocker, another DMA has just appeared. Bump, bump, bum. So they're clearly aware that we blew up their last mining machine, and they sent another one.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess it could be an automated process.
Yeah.
Probably isn't, but
I loved this beat at the end. I was
Really?
just like, the 10C gives no fucks. They don't seem to care at all. It's almost insulting how small their reaction was after they spend all these episodes, the heroes spend all these episodes stressing out about what will the reaction be. They could start a war. And this is so important. This is, life or death decision. And the 10C is like, whatever, we've got lots of these things. Just put another one out there. I just loved how they just totally reframed and recontextualized everything with that simple. Yeah, they just put another one out there. They give no fucks. They really don't care about you guys.
I guess it does kind of make you ponder more the mystery of what will these entities be like, and how will they react when there is like actual full-on communication with them, which I think is going to happen soon. And I guess that brings me to my final thoughts on the episode, which is two things. But one, 4 episodes kind of seems like a lot left to resolve this. I feel like we're closer to the ending than that. And if they follow form, which I'm not crazy about this formula, but if they do take the same route as, say, season 1 of Picard and seasons 2 and 3 of Discovery, then what they typically do is they have the third to last episode is kind of a bridge that sets up the big 2-part finale, and then they do the big 2-part finale. But I kind of feel like we're ready to get to that now. So I'm just throwing this out there. This is probably wrong. This is just my speculation. But I'm wondering if next week we get like the bridge that sets up all the pieces on the chessboard for the 2-part finale. Then we basically get a 2-part finale with episodes 11 and 12. And then we have episode 13, our season finale, and that's going to be more of a little epilogue stuck on the end. If anyone has seen, we were talking about Buffy earlier, Buffy the Vampire Slayer, but if anyone has seen season 4 of that show, they kind of broke their formula. They also normally ended seasons with a 2-part finale, but then season 4 they had like this weird little epilogue episode where everyone took naps and it was like all about their dreams. It's kind of a interesting and weird choice for a weird season of that show. But
by the way, was that the one that had the cheese and stuff?
Yeah, with the cheese man.
Yeah, that was a good episode.
I'm also thinking that part of the finale of this season, and people should comment and let me know if they agree with this, if they think I'm right, if they think I'm wrong. I could be way off the money here, but there's been so much talk about, sacrifice, making the tough choices. The first episode was called Kobayashi Maru, Burnham having to face the no-win scenario. I'm wondering if Burnham will have to choose between saving Book and saving the galaxy, and that Book will die, Book will be sacrificed. Book and Burnham will be like, oh yeah, we still love each other, but this is going to be so tragic and heartbreaking, and I have to die to save everyone, and you have to let me go, and we get that, and then maybe like the little epilogue episode will be like the funeral episode. That's just, I'm kind of just spitballing that, but yeah. I can totally see that happening.
Yeah, I have wondered if Book will survive this season. I hope he does, because
I kind of do too, yeah.
I just love watching the two of them together, and the thought of going into season 5 without that is not exciting. I did my final
but
thought.
For Dave, Brian, that would clear up room to give more attention to some of the other characters that he says he's missing. So maybe Dave is on team hashtag Let's Kill Book.
Yeah,
I didn't say anything.
Let's burn the book. Burn the book. Hashtag burn the book.
It's a small world one in our live audience. She says, "No, I love Book. I mean, I love him too. I'm not saying that I want to see that happen, but I can totally see it. So I could be really wrong, but
I would. The big thing that gives me hope that Book will survive is that, just as we've commented, the show is taking a fairly light-hearted, relative to the stakes, verve, and it would be kind of a tonal crash to kill him off, given how much kind of rompy funish this season has been.
No, wait. I know how to make it work. Brian.
I have a way to make it work too, I think. Go ahead.
They tease us that we've lost Book, but then we end on like no wait, there's still hope. And the season 5 is going to be Star Trek Discovery, the search for Book.
That would totally work with the tone they've set.
So here's what I think is, I feel like there's a potential place for Book in which this is sort of not a great solution because it does take him off the grid, but he goes off with these aliens or whatever because they cannot conceive of how our ethics and society work. But Book has both a unique spore drive connection and also a unique sort of empathic ability that connected him to like the biosphere of his planet. And if he could essentially be their sort of interpreter, their linguistic guide, their societal guide to humanity in the Milky Way galaxy, I could see him exiting the show for a time to essentially get these
revolving door. It's that revolving door we talked about.
Get these aliens up to speed on maybe not digging in our ant pile.
I would really like that. Of all the things we've speculated, I think that might be my favorite, Dave.
No,
well, it fits what his kind of ability set is. And I don't want to see Book get killed. I like the character.
No, I was giving you a hard time.
I struggle sometimes to figure out what I wanted him to, where I would want him on the ship. But anyway, I think that would be an interesting one. That would indeed, also fulfill your. He's off the ship, but could come back. At their behest.
And for me, I think that would be a very satisfying conclusion to his arc this season of getting his planet blown up and losing everything in the first episode to here where he kind of has like a new purpose.
Yeah. My final thought is, as far as a prediction goes, is that Tarka is going to end up having to come to terms with the fact that he needs to negotiate with the 10C because they have the power he needs to go home, and that's going to end up being a reversal from him from blowing them all up. He's got to now I've got to make a deal with these guys.
Tarka's kind of the wild card, and that kind of makes me nervous that
if they go with the theme of
Tarka.
If the theme of de-escalation in any way continues to run through the season, then he's still a wild card that could ruin things for everybody, but
or make them more interesting. It depends on how they play the wild card, I guess.
I do, like I said, an episode or two back. I kind of like his presence. I don't love him as a as a person. He needs to get punched in the nose, but as a dramatic presence, he actually is a fairly lively character, and I kind of like that. So
if that's all we have on Rubicon, I will go ahead and go into the Gorn Egg section of the show. That's where we talk about all the Easter eggs, in jokes, and continuity connections I found within the episode that I thought were worth mentioning. But the first one, we'll just start with the title of the episode itself, Rubicon. That is a reference to what Julius Caesar is believed to have said in real life history. But essentially, if you don't know what that means, it's when he took the army across the Rubicon back into Italy. The army wasn't supposed to march into their home country because that could be used to take over the government, and that's what he was trying to do. So once he did that, his kind of intentions were shown, and the quote is "the die is cast." That's what he's believed to have said: "Is the die is cast" when he crossed the river Rubicon. Which might just be something that Shakespeare made up, I think.
Yeah, they couldn't call the episode "The Die Is Cast." So.
Right, because there is a Deep Space Nine episode called "The Die Is Cast," which that's the episode where we see the Cardassian Obsidian Order and the Romulan Tal Shiar team up to go attack the Dominion and go try to blow up the Changeling homeworld. That was in season 3.
That was a big oops. but yeah, in general, crossing the Rubicon is a quick metaphor for
the point of no return. Yeah.
Right.
Next up, Commander Non is now working in Federation security. I think the only time the words Federation security, the only time those words were ever said in canon was Star Trek 3, when we meet the Federation security officer who overhears McCoy talking about visiting forbidden planets in a bar, and then takes them to the Federation funny farm.
Yep.
And that guy's totally Section 31, right? Retroactively.
There's a lot of examples where you can retcon that in if you choose to do so.
That guy was like, your voice is carrying.
Yeah, I think he might have been too nice to be Section 31. He seemed like he gave him an opportunity to stand down on his own before he arrested him. Next, Gorn Egg. We have a rogue planet in this episode. This one might be a bit of a stretch, but there is an episode of Enterprise called Rogue Planet about visiting a rogue planet. That's a real-life astronomy term. That's just a planet with no solar system. It escaped its solar system, and it's just floating around rogue. It's like a Ronin, a samurai with no master, a planet without a star.
It's a little chilly, lonely planet.
Except on Enterprise, where it's got jungles and plants with
it's like geothermal heat coming out of the planet's core.
And green leaves to absorb the non-existent solar radiation.
The next Gorn Egg, Book mentions an incident that happened with him and Burnham when they were in Brain space. They had a run-in with some pirates, and he called it the Brain Gambit. The Breen were a species that were first mentioned in The Next Generation, but we didn't really get to see them until Deep Space Nine. Their first on-screen appearance was the Deep Space Nine Season 4 episode, Indiscretion. Interesting thing about that episode is that me and Dave actually talked to the writers who wrote the story. They got the story credit for that episode, Tony Mayberry and Jack Trevino. They live right down the road from where we live in Austin, Texas. They're in San Antonio, Texas. So go check that out in Tex-Trek number, I don't remember off the top of my head, but about a year ago. So 50 less than now, like in the Tex-Trek 120 something probably. But it's there if you look for it. And then the last Gorn Egg I have, because I didn't count the USS Mitchell as a Gorn Egg. I don't think it's named after Gary Mitchell. I don't know who the USS Mitchell is named after. So that's not on the list. But what is on the list is the DMA controller. And I still don't know if I'm sold that this is a connection to the Omega molecule, but everyone that I've talked to seems to think that the look and shape of the DMA controller is remarkably similar to how the Omega molecule was shown to look in the Star Trek Voyager episode, The Omega Directive. I think we might be reading too much into this. I think it might be a case of, the controls got to be the Borg, right? But I might be wrong. Maybe. I mean, boronite is the big Omega molecule thing, so Omega molecules might show up. I'm just not sure if this DMA controller is 100% for sure meant to look like that. It kind of doesn't make sense to me that like this machine looks like the Omega molecule. But
are there any upcoming episode titles that have Omega in them?
I don't know any of the upcoming episode titles. I don't think they've released them.
Okay.
But yeah, I'm not sure exactly what's going to happen in these next 4 episodes. But yeah, it could just be Omega molecules all over the place.
Given that they keep mentioning the galactic barrier, I kind of think the Mitchell thing is deliberate. But
I don't think people would name ships after him.
Maybe in universe it's not named after that Mitchell, but I think the writers probably all went and watched that episode and are very aware of the character, and that might be why he showed up in the
I've seen that happen before. I can't think of an example off the top of my head, but I've seen like they clearly pulled something out of a certain episode. And like a couple episodes later, I'll see something else, and I was like, "Oh, you writers, that was just like fresh on your mind because you watched that other episode for this other reason."
Yeah.
I've noticed that happen before.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's all I have for Gorn Eggs. I do want to talk about the subspace transmissions, though. We like to get feedback from our audience. So if you have any thoughts or opinions on this episode, be sure to let us know. You can leave a comment on YouTube. You can reply to me on Twitter. You can comment on the Tex-Trek Facebook page. I do have a couple I want to mention. The first one being from Paul Sutherland, and this is about last week's episode, All In.
The casino episode.
Yeah, the casino heisty episode. Which I think might be fair to call a filler episode. But Paul Sutherland, our friend on Twitter, said, "I thought this episode had a few cute moments, but was a weak place to jump back in after a likely unintentional mid-season break. Frustratingly little story progression kept it down to." It's like, yeah, like this is more of what I was hoping for than what we got last week. And then our friend Stress Free K, who's in our live audience now, and he left us this really long comment on YouTube that I don't think I have time to read all of it, but he kind of expanded some of the thoughts he was expressing last week about mental health workers and Dr. Kolber's reaction to Book and in the episode All In. But then the thing I wanted to point out here is some speculation that he came across. Stress Free K writes, "Also, what did I miss?" The other YouTube channel. "What did I miss?" speculates that it's the Q who are responsible for the DMA, which could trigger a crossover event with Picard. Perhaps the DMA belongs to a baby Q that lost one of its toys. So now our Delancey Q has to come and help fix this. And maybe the Omega particle will attract the new and improved 32nd century Borg. Stress Free K, I understand like the thinking with that, because there's going to be some overlap between Discovery season 4 and Picard season 2, and that's going to be 3 weeks if we're getting episodes of both shows at the same time. But I don't think there's going to be any storyline crossover like that, just because I think this overlap was kind of unintentional. I think they thought that Discovery season 4 would have all aired before they start on Picard, and I think Picard was also meant to start shooting much sooner than it did. It was delayed because of COVID. They actually wanted to do Picard season 2 before we would have had Discovery season 4. I think if we lived in a non-pandemic-y world, I think that's what would have happened. So I don't think that was planned, but that would be interesting. I'm open to them doing that at some point. I would like to see some show-to-show crossover, and I think they've teased that they would like to do something like that at some point. So we'll see if they ever do it.
And certainly Q is the easiest way to arrange it.
Oh, yeah. Q could make that happen very easily. And stress-free, I see that you're in our audience now saying that crossover would be so cool. And I do agree with you. But that's going to be it for Tex-Trek this week. But it's not it for hashtag TQIF, because in about an hour, I think, if I have any say or influence over it, but around 10:30 Eastern, 9:30 Central, I will be over on the Starfleet Boy After Dark channel. There's probably going to be a lot to talk about over there. There's this big season finale to the show Peacemaker. I'm always going to have plenty of thoughts on Star Trek to talk about. We get real interactive with the audience over there, so feel free to pop in and just join the conversation, and we'll talk about whatever you want to talk about in the comments. So please check that out. Otherwise, we will be back next week to discuss our next episode of Star Trek Discovery. Just a reminder, if you watch us live, that will probably be at an earlier time. Until then, as always, live long and prosper, y'all.
Listen to the Tex-Trek podcast through Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or at tex-trek.com. Like us on Facebook at facebook.com/tex-trek. And follow Fathery on Twitter at TXTrek. Please support us by liking our videos and subscribing to our channel on YouTube. Thank you and take care.